Sugar scientist explains how to reduce the absorption of carbohydrates with a simple trick. The glucose goddess A, Jessie Inchauspé. Jessie is a French biochemist and New York Times best-selling author. On the Jay Shetty podcast, let us begin. Excessive glucose accelerates aging, manifesting in skin and organ changes. Currently, 3 out of 5 people die from inflammatory diseases. Glucose, or blood sugar, is the body's primary energy source, obtained from foods like starches, bread, rice and sugars, fruits, cakes. Although the body doesn't need as much sugar, its consumption is pleasurable and releases dopamine. Reducing sugar intake can improve health, though cutting it out entirely can be challenging. The relationship with sugar can be addictive, requiring re-education and moderation to avoid health issues like type 2 diabetes.
When we eat a meal or food that contains a lot of glucose, so for example, a chocolate cake is a good option, a good example, or a plate of pasta or anything else that's starchy or sweet, when we deliver that glucose very quickly to our body, we experience what's called a glucose spike, which means just a rapid increase in how much glucose is in your body. And if you're wearing a glucose monitor, you will see this. It will look like this mountain that's just rising and rising and rising, and then it crashes. You don't need to wear a glucose monitor to understand the benefits of my work, by the way, but it's a cool visual tool. So what happens in your body when we spike? Why is it bad for us? There are 3 main mechanisms that are going on a physiological level that make these spikes damaging. The first one has to do with our mitochondria. The mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. Most people remember that from biology class. So your mitochondria are these little factories inside your cells that are responsible for turning glucose molecules into energy. Okay? They're incredibly important. The problem is when you give them a glucose spike, so when you deliver them a bunch of glucose molecules very quickly, they break down. They kind of go on strike. You know, it's like when you have so much to do on your to-do list that you're just like, I can't do anything, I have to go nap. That's the feeling they get. They're like overwhelmed by all these glucose molecules and they cannot do their job properly anymore. And so what happens, you feel this as fatigue. So you keep eating this sugar and these carbs, but you're exhausted. You wake up in the morning, you're tired. Going to the grocery store is exhausting. Playing with your kids is draining. Your mitochondria are not functioning properly anymore.
When our body experiences glucose spikes, it initiates a cooking process called glycation, akin to how a chicken browns in an oven. This process is continuous in humans from birth, gradually causing aging. Glycation accelerates with glucose spikes, leading to visible signs of aging like wrinkles and internal organ aging. Moreover, these spikes trigger inflammation, a major driver of diseases. Insulin, released to lower glucose levels, can lead to fat storage and eventually type 2 diabetes if consistently high. This cascade of effects mitochondrial fatigue, glycation, inflammation. Diabetes can result in various symptoms like brain fog and hormonal imbalances. To maintain a healthy body and mind, avoiding frequent glucose spikes is crucial, as they disrupt bodily functions and well-being.
Actually, breakfast food is usually a top offender, right? So orange juice, fruit smoothies, breakfast cereal, even if they say no sugar or low in sugar, that doesn't mean they don't contain glucose. It just means they don't contain any table sugar, but they could also contain sugar from fruit, which is quote unquote natural. So it doesn't have to be claimed as an added sugar in a package, right? Breakfast foods, huge offenders. And then kind of like funny things that you wouldn't expect, like eating a lot of grapes. If you eat 50 grapes, that's actually a lot of sugar because the fruit that we eat today has been bred to be extremely high in sugar and concentrated in sugar. But I think breakfast foods are one of the biggest ones. Oh, also dried fruit. People don't realize that it's not because something comes from fruit that it's good for you. Dried fruit or fruit smoothie or fruit juice can contain, tens and tens of grams of sugar, even though it originally came from a fruit. But your body doesn't care whether sugar came from an orange juice and is now in an orange juice, or whether sugar came from a beetroot and is now in a can of Coca-Cola, right? Those sugar molecules will both lead to a glucose spike.
Switching from a sweet to a savory breakfast can profoundly impact your day. A glucose spike post-breakfast leads to crash, cravings, fatigue, and inflammation. Opting for a savory breakfast centered on protein and healthy fats maintains steady glucose levels. Sweet treats can still be enjoyed as desserts after meals. Morning starches and sugars quickly enter the bloodstream due to an empty stomach, causing energy fluctuations and cravings throughout the day. This shift from sweet to savory feels like entering a parallel universe, offering stable energy and mental clarity. Withdrawal symptoms from sugar, such as headaches or low energy, highlight its addictive nature, driving continuous consumption despite negative effects.
And listen, sugar is addictive, right? And that dopamine is very, 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 very addictive. And as human beings, eating something sweet is a very easy way to get a hit. Now, what you're talking about can also be due to if somebody completely cuts out carbs, so starches and sugars, completely. Let's say from today to tomorrow, you cut out all carbs. That can cause issues because if you've been eating carbs your whole life, your body expects these carbs every 2 to 3 to 4 hours, and your body's actually just burning glucose for energy. So all of a sudden, you cut off its supply of glucose, and it becomes a little bit stressed out, especially if your body's not used to also burning fat for fuel. In a healthy body, you can switch from burning glucose for energy to burning fat for energy easily. So either you eat glucose and your body gets energy that way, or you're not eating and your body's burning fat. In most of us, we're eating every 2 to 3 to 4 hours some carbs. And so our body doesn't know how to burn fat for fuel anymore. It doesn't have that muscle. So the idea is to train it slowly to be able to do that, not to just cut out completely the glucose, cut the grass from under the foot too quickly. That's going to be difficult.
One of the biggest challenges in changing habits or resolutions is the misconception that it's an all or nothing approach, perpetuated by diets and media messaging. Weight loss as a sole objective can lead to unhealthy practices and doesn't reflect true internal health. Shifting focus to sustainable health through simple hacks like savory breakfasts, delaying sugary treats until after meals, and prioritizing vegetables at the start of meals can transform energy levels and reduce cravings. Research shows that eating veggies first creates a protective mesh in the intestines, slowing glucose absorption and preventing energy crash. Delaying starchy foods like bread during meals can also curb post-meal cravings and energy dips. Incorporating these hacks can significantly improve overall well-being without strict dieting.
Interesting, Jay. This hack actually has a lot of parallels in cultural habits. So, I'm French, and in France we have this tradition of crudité at the beginning of a meal, which is raw veggies. In Italy, they have antipasti, which is generally vegetables at the beginning of the meal. In the Middle East, you usually start your meals with herbs eaten by the bunch. So none of the stuff I'm talking about is that revolutionary. It's kind of common sense, but we've lost touch with these traditions, and now we understand the science behind them, so I want us to bring them back.
Changing dietary habits, especially regarding sugar intake, can be challenging due to common misconceptions and habits. Scientific evidence shows that starting meals with vegetables, followed by proteins, fats, and lastly carbohydrates can reduce glucose spikes by up to 75%. This simple hack can significantly improve health without restrictive dieting. Focusing on health rather than weight loss is essential, as health is not solely determined by body size. Consuming sugary foods at strategic times, such as after meals rather than on an empty stomach, can also minimize negative impacts like cravings, fatigue, and inflammation. The American Heart Association's upper limit for added sugar intake is 25 grams for women and 50 grams for men. But ideally, we need none. Consuming sugar in the morning leads to higher risks of inflammation, diabetes, and aging. Studies show that stable glucose levels prevent intense cravings and overeating, making it easier to control sugar intake. To aid in maintaining low glucose levels and reducing sugar absorption, consider using the supplement GlucoTrust. This supplement can help manage sugar intake effectively. For more details, check the link in the video description and subscribe to the channel for more health tips.